Prepare to be shocked. It turns out the US Army is very overweight, and wait until you hear the numbers. Now, as funny as you think this video is about to be, it's actually rather shocking and a little scary, considering how many soldiers are overweight and how much money we spend on overweight soldiers. Now, this will be a fun game. Leave a comment down below with a guess on how much money we spend on overweight soldiers. Are you ready for this? $1.5 billion are spent every year on obesity-related injuries, but the numbers are even more staggering than that. Another mind-blowing stat is that 658,000 days per year are lost from these soldiers and their injuries. So that means, like, I hurt myself because I'm overweight, thus I can't go to work, but the military still needs to cover your costs of being a soldier. And that alone actually costs the Department of Defense $103 million for you not to go to work. A lot of people tend to forget that every soldier and military member has a cost per day that we need to keep you alive and need to keep you around and need to pay you. So again, $103 million for you not to go to work. So, how many soldiers are actually overweight? Well, the first thing I need to mention, so we're not too biased, is that no matter what, the Army will always be the most overweight because they have the most military members from the Reserve Component, National Guard, etc. So I just want to put that out there. But from 2019 to 2021, we saw an uptick with obese soldiers. So the number given from the US Army is 10,000 active duty soldiers are overweight from 2019 to 2021. The word they actually use is obese. Now, the reason why this is important is because this was during the pandemic, yet the Army is still struggling with an obese issue. Now, the US Army has a lot of soldiers, and I'm sure to some of you, 10,000 soldiers, that does not sound like a lot. But to compare that to a unit that I was in, the 101st Airborne, that has about 14,000 active duty soldiers. So when you compare an entire division to an obese division, nearly 10,000 soldiers, that's a lot of soldiers who are obese and are costing taxpayers a lot of money. But the issue doesn't only end with the active duty service in the Army, because we have a lot of young adults, teenagers who also want to join the Army, but the issue is a lot of them are overweight and quite literally obese. They don't qualify to join the Army. And if you were not aware, the US Army is already having a recruitment issue. In fact, the US Army missed their mark by 15,000 recruits, and a lot of recruiters complained that it had to do with obesity. Some of it is education, but a lot of it is obesity. In fact, we have the number. It's 1 in 10 potential recruits do not qualify to join the US Army because soldiers or candidates are overweight. Now, the US Army, to combat the loss of potential recruits, they essentially started a 90-day train-up program before basic training. And for most of us, basic training was the train-up program to get to the Army, but now things have changed. Like, if you are overweight or even your educational scores are not that good, you can go into this program, which I think is pretty cool, and then from there you can go to basic training. Now, I will say there is a lot of issues when it comes to soldiers being overweight as well. For those of you who are not aware, internally within the US Army, this has been an issue in what the standard is for being overweight. Many people argue that the height and weight tests are outdated. Many people argue that I can be the most in shape and jacked soldier ever, but I'm still considered overweight by the Army standards. I even have friends who were kicked out of the Army for failing height and weight, yet they passed their physical test. So you can see there's a weird dichotomy of you can be in shape, you can be good to go, but if you are considered overweight by the Army standards, you're not good to go. So, as you can see, we have quite the issue. We have new recruits who can't become soldiers to replace the soldiers who are obese. We have billions of dollars being lost from the Department of Defense, our taxpayer money. It's becoming an issue, and although it is a little laughable, I think the long term, it's not that laughable because we might start to see some issues. We might start to see some standards being lowered, and that's not good when you have the most elite and strongest military fighting force in the world.